Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Um, one of the hardest parts of doing this job is client management. Like
Piece of cake.
we're supposed to take care of the client and listen to their direction and do what they want. And I don't know. I just feel like it's a job in itself. Like you're asked to be a shrink.
Well, so there's some people that say, many people, that you should never take a client that a jury won't love.
What does that even mean?
You have to have your clients have to be likable, otherwise you can't win. And I've always said, don't hard personality people also deserve justice? Isn't it? I mean, is justice only for the nice people that people like? Is that how it goes? Like, you aren't likable, you're a problem, therefore you do not get the right to go to court.
I agree with that, and because I don't think that that's a good rule to follow that people don't like. I think the story will tell you who that person is.
I've heard this many times, like in trial lawyer conferences. You know, you got to get the likable client. Your client is everything. You got to turn down the other ones. And I've never felt that way.
Well, what does that even mean when they're saying that? What does that mean, likable? Like, likable how?
The jury's going to like them.
But how do you know if some people like somebody? I mean, a good example of it is that half the country loves Donald Trump and half the country doesn't. How do you tell what people are going to like what people?
Let's go through some examples.
Okay, give me some examples.
All right. So Perkins Coie's been in the news lately.
Yeah.
But my first experience with Perkins Coie was in the 90s when I was becoming a plaintiff lawyer, and I decided to go into employment litigation, which was really the stupidest thing I could have thought of. And I thought, this is very interesting. The problem was that the law changed literally weekly because there was no big body of employment discrimination law. It was just constantly changing, so you had to keep up with it and then everything else. So my very first client that I took on was a woman who we needed to sue Boeing. Again, like, I don't know, when you think about it, it's like, Karen, this is your first employment case, and you're going to sue Boeing. And their attorneys are Perkins Coie.
This was in the 90s.
Yes.
Okay.
Kevin Hamilton was the defense lawyer who, I have nothing but respect for him, even then and now, but he kicked my butt constantly. And I realized, that's when I first realized that you can be an attorney working for this huge defense firm and, you know, representing Boeing. But he invited me over to his house with a bunch of other Perkins Coie people for a Democratic fundraiser.
Yeah.
And currently, he's probably one of the reasons why Perkins Coie is getting sued, because his causes are all Democratic, and he goes around the country. He fights red zoning laws, all constitutional issues. I mean, it's all voter, discrimination. That's his job. So I didn't know that. Anyway, the client. So here was her disability. She had narcolepsy.
Wait, what? Wait, what's narcolepsy?
It's when you fall asleep without control.
Wait, okay. Okay, so it's an actual, like, condition.
Yes.
So she was like, she was not a high level person. She was like, a production line person, and she'd be like sleeping. But they had a duty to accommodate her because that was a disability.
Yeah.
That was my claim. Well, then the question was, is it really narcolepsy? Because she was doing sleep studies. Is it really narcolepsy or sleep apnea? Or is it narcolepsy? And then the question became, is it narcolepsy or is it drugs?
So this was the question in the litigation, that there was not an accommodation because this was not narcolepsy.
Yes.
Okay, what, did you get a narcolopologist?
Well,
is that even a doctor?
Here's how bad it was.
Yeah.
My job was to prevent them from knowing that there was a drug issue.
Oh.
I only knew that. And there's two things that stand out in my mind. One is I had to go pick her up for her deposition. First of all, I had to find her.
Yeah.
I had no idea where she was. I had to go track her down. I'm in my car. She's in Everett. I basically pulled her out of a drug house.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, and she made it through deposition, although I had all these accommodations where she could go and sleep and then come back and do her deposition. The other thing I remember is we were at, I think it was WAMS, Washington Mediation, for the mediation. I think so. And again, I knew she basically, anyway, my recollection of the mediation was her sleeping through most of it.
Yeah.
Like she'd be up and then she'd go sleep and then she'd be up and then she'd go sleep and then she'd go up. And I never drug tested her, so I didn't know, and I didn't want them to know, and they didn't ask.
Yeah.
So there you go.
But
I can't even describe for you fully what it took to keep that case together, because she literally was not living in normal housing. She was definitely addicted to drugs. She definitely had a sleep disorder.
yeah.
And Perkins Coie was a defense.
I mean, that's tough. For me, it's that I love clients that the majority of the public don't like.
I know, but where do you go? I mean, you have to go get them.
Well, no, I was a public defender.
I know.
They came to me.
Oh, wow.
They all showed up. And I love that job. And the reason why I love that job is that it's easy, Karen, not to like people because they're different than you, or there are kinds of ways that like you don't relate to. And what I have always found is that this is like the kind of thing I use to kind of when I approach somebody who is very hard to approach, and that projects a sense of like unlikability. Because I remember that there were children one day.
Well, you do like everybody.
I do like everybody because I think everybody has a story to tell. So to me, it's not about the personality.
Yeah.
I want to know, what's your story?
But I feel like I am like that also.
Yeah.
Which is why I like this job. However, even that there's still some consequences, which is pulling your client out of a drug den so they can go get their deposition taken, finding clothes for your client to wear, just trying to find your clients a lot of the times. Plaintiff litigation is a lot longer than criminal defense in general. The timeline can be years.
And it's probably more challenging. But
they get all your medical records. They get all your employment records. They interview all your friends. They look at all your social media and your watch readouts, and they're constantly all over you. I don't have a problem with a client that is not white collar. In fact, I prefer a diversity of clients, and especially those that are in need. But there's a line there between what makes it really difficult for you as a lawyer to do your job with a client that's like not following procedures or hiding things from you, or making things really difficult.
Well, to be clear, I mean, I'm pretty much working on every case that you have.
Yeah.
And a majority of the clients, I would say, are clients that would have otherwise, a lot of the clients would have otherwise access to justice issues if they're not represented by us.
Sure.
Because they would not be able to have the type of access they're getting to the court systems. And if there are issues with like not liking a client, I think that it's about whether or not those issues are making it difficult for us to cooperate with one another. And there's like a personality conflict because of those issues. How do you navigate those? Because to me, that's been the challenge. It's not that the person is not likable because they've done something horrific or they have a quality that makes people disdain them. It's that are our personalities so in conflict that you can't trust my advice? You can't listen to me. How do you deal with that?
Well, now I just tell them they should go get another lawyer.
Okay. But do you give up like super fast, or do you give it some time?
So I have some triggers.
What are your triggers?
Disrespect to the staff.
Okay.
Pretty much gone.
Gone.
Yeah.
Okay. What else? I know that. We have let clients go who have disrespected
and
the
it
staff.
doesn't even matter how good their cases are.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And then lying.
lying.
Well, you're a public defender.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I have the luxury of saying, like, no. Because what happens when somebody lies, so this is what we always tell people when they come in.
Yeah.
What are you scared of the other side knowing? First of all, I guarantee you we've heard that or worse before.
Yeah.
And we have attorney-client.
Yeah.
So we just need to know so we can prepare for whatever the bad thing is so that we can address it. So we don't want to get it by surprise.
But you're not going to get that on the outset. I mean, if you go to a therapist and they go like, tell me everything that's going on, it's going to take a little time to go, here's what all the things I'm afraid of.
But we do put that in their head, like, you need to tell us.
You need to tell
and they
us.
may not tell us right then, but they're going to tell us. And it's normally not like, oh, I lied about this whole accident. That's never going to be
Yeah.
it. It's something that they're ashamed of. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I
Just an example.
I had trouble when I was a juvenile.
Yeah.
Or I had alcoholism problems. Or
Yeah.
it's something that's normally shame-based that
Yeah.
people don't want to tell you.
Yeah.
But sometimes it isn't. For example, this is a long time ago, more than 20 years ago. There's a client, and we were putting together the case. I already told him that you got to tell us whatever you're worried about the other side knowing. And he, we're not going to judge you for it. We just need to know. And we were trying to put together their wage loss, and there was a pretty big gap. I was like, "What's going on there?" It turned out he was in jail for rape.
Ooh.
So I just didn't want to represent a rapist. So
Was he a convicted rapist?
Oh, he was in jail for like a long time.
Okay,
And it
sometimes
was
people
first
can
degree.
be in jail without being convicted.
I just didn't want to.
Okay, well so that I think is a different thing, is that you're not morally aligned with the client. And that's important to tell a client.
And I didn't want to. And I wasn't a brand new lawyer, but I wasn't, a 40-year lawyer. I was like somewhere in the middle. And I just told him, I don't want to represent you.
Yeah. That must have been a hard decision.
It wasn't.
Well, no.
For him it was, but for me it wasn't.
Yeah.
We put time into it. We probably represented him for like 3 or 4 months. It was, so we hadn't filed a lawsuit or anything. They weren't prejudiced. They could go get another attorney. But yeah.
I struggle with that, because
I don't have a constitutional duty to represent a client like you do as a public defender.
right, but like that
They
quality.
can go get another lawyer that's not
Yeah.
grossed out about that, frankly.
I think that quality of being a public defender and having a constitutional obligation to protect people, that quality is just inherently in me. And so part of like when somebody tells me something that I would be me myself, I'm just like, to me that's about me and not them. And so I'm very suspicious of myself when I start to make cases about myself. I become very like suspicious. I go, that's not in, if my personality is dominating those aspects of the case, I'm just being candid with them. Like you're like, I can't do it. But I would tell them like, I'm just thinking about myself too much. I can't focus on you.
Well, let me tell you where this comes from. My no problem in saying I'm not going to represent you. Okay. So I haven't really talked about this a lot with you, but my mother was a lawyer, and I worked for my mother starting from when I graduated from high school. I was kind of a paralegal, but pretty much I did legal work.
What did your mom do?
She was a lawyer.
Well, what kind of a lawyer?
Basically, you walk in the door, and she did it. That's what happened. Yes, people were general practitioners back then.
What was her name?
Mary Fung Kohler.
Mary Fung Kohler. Did she go by Mary Fung?
Well, we called her Fungus.
Fungus?
The kids did.
That's sweet.
Yes, we did.
That's sweet.
We all called her MFK.
MFK?
I called my mother MFK. She's a badass. But, so she would take anyone that came in off the street. So here's a story from, I was probably still a teenager.
Yeah.
And I used to have to type out the wills. So people would come in to get wills done.
Yeah.
And not only did I have to type them out, I had to type them out in triplicate.
What does that mean?
This means, first of all, there's a typewriter, an IBM Selectric. And there's actually a correct button on it, but I couldn't use that if you're doing triplicate because that's a sheet of paper, a sheet of carbon paper, a sheet of paper, a sheet of carbon paper, and a sheet of paper. All in there. So if I made a typo, I had to start all over again. She wouldn't let me use whiteout.
Yeah.
So I had to do the wills like that. I'm a very good typist, but it was a pain because inevitably I would make one mistake or something like that almost when I was done. Person comes in to get their will done. And I don't know this person, but I know one of the person's family members. This is in Lake Forest Park. Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
Small community, small town. So the person who's a woman is going to leave all their assets to, this person and then this person and then this niece and this niece, because there's some nieces and nephews. However, wanted a special codicil.
What is a codicil?
Well, special provision.
Okay, special provision.
That since I knew them, I would have known one of the nieces who would be at my age.
Yeah.
Right? So that means still a teen.
Yeah.
If this niece is married to a black person, then they get nothing. Now, not against the law.
Wait, even today?
I'm just saying, not against the law. What? My mother says this is it, and I said that's not right. And then she said, explain to me. I'm not the lawyer. She said they have the right to do this. They have the right to be biased and prejudiced, because my mother was at the time was not. She's in a mixed marriage. My mother was in a mixed marriage.
Yeah.
At a time when it was very frowned upon, including by my father's parents, very upset about that. I refused. I said, I'm not typing that. And she said, yes, you are. This is your job. You don't have the right.
You can't say no to MFK.
And I could not. I did it.
You did it? You said no to MFK?
Not only did I do it, I couldn't tell my friend about it.
What do you mean you couldn't tell? Oh, because it was confidential?
Attorney-client.
Sorry. Yeah.
So I had no power in that situation. I mean, my mother was technically correct. And I vowed I would never do that. Or I tried to never be in a position to do that. Now, I did represent bad people when I was an insurance defense lawyer.
Yeah.
But other than that, as a plaintiff lawyer, we can choose our clients.
Yeah.
So that's why I have no hesitation.
Yeah. For me, I represented somebody who had violently abused his spouse. And it was really hard for me because my mom was violently abused when I was growing up. And I had the opportunity to walk away from the case, but I didn't. Because I thought that it was not right for me to make the case about myself, that I could maybe help this person understand what he was doing to his spouse and what has he been doing to his spouse for some time. He faced an inevitable sentence. He was going to go away. The question was how long. I really used it as an opportunity to spend a lot of time with him, to understand why he felt it necessary to beat his wife senselessly.
Oops.
And try to understand why he was okay with that at times, but not at other times. Clearly felt remorse. And I thought it really productive that some of the beatings were captured on audio because the wife would constantly call 911.
God.
And the terror in her voice, the shaking in her voice, the tears. I went into meetings and I would play the tapes. And I would keep playing the tapes. I never told him why, but just keep playing the tapes. And one day he just realized what he was doing. He just sort of realized that the fear that he was putting in her heart and in her mind, and the terror that he was instilling in her. and he turned it around. Guy turned it around. And so,
How do you know that he turned it around?
because I know after he got out, I represented him for years after that.
Well.
and it never happened. He was on supervision. He was monitored.
Did she stay married to him?
Yeah, I worked through it. I mean, I can't make decisions for people. I don't know if it was the best decision or not, but like, you know, that experience kind of like touched on me because my mom would not leave my stepdad for many years, and it made no sense to me. It just didn't make any sense to me. and it just was like, why do we continue to stay with this person who is so bad? And I just learned that people are complicated, Karen, and they're just, things are not so black and white, you know, about like, you know, this is like a, you know, this is just, you do this, you're a bad person, and it's just more complicated. So I get, you know, and so to me, it's like, it's hard for me to make those decisions and be hard and fast about them. I super respect what the decision you made, because it's like a core of yours. It's like one of your moral commandments, which is you are anything that has to do with marginalizing people, discriminating against people. It just causes you to like stop. I respect that, and I back you 1,000%. I don't know why I can't be that way. I can't be that way. I seek understanding. I seek redemption, and it's a limitation I have. It's a blind spot I have.
Well, it's, you know, it's funny how a lot of what we do stems back from or into like, what do we go through? Why? And for me, I'm really good with you until something happens and you break the trust, or you break something with me, and then I'm really good at just saying goodbye.
I got to tell you that's cruel. That's a cruel quality of yours, Karen. And you know, because I understand that if you use that tool professionally,
Yeah.
but personally that would be devastating.
So
that's a devastating tool.
however,
to just.
I didn't always used to be that way. I used to be very much like you, but it changed. You know when it changed when I went through my divorce process, which took 5 years of my life.
Okay.
Because I kept trying to hold it together, to find that way to turn it around, to continue to do that process that you did. And ultimately, it needed to stop.
But he betrayed you.
But I've done it since then with other people.
Yeah.
A friend that I had for dozens of years,
Yeah.
who finally went completely over the line, and that was it for me. And I've had a problem, and I'm in coaching / therapy. Of things like that I run through. And she was proud of me for that, because my issue is that I have no problem confronting someone, none, unless I love them. Then I have a problem.
What do you mean by that? Unpack that. If you love somebody, you can't go to them and say, what you're doing to me is cruel. You can't?
I have a confrontation issue. I want everyone to be happy in my life that I love.
Oh my God, you always tell me like you can't make everybody happy, Mo.
I know, well, do as I say, not as I do, Mo.
I see.
But in my work life, Mike's laughing, in my work life, as long as I don't love you,
Okay.
Because you have to do these things, number one, for self-preservation and longevity of a career. You do.
No.
Oh, yes, you do.
I disagree with you,
Oh,
Karen.
if you don't do that, you will get,
No.
yes.
Okay, I'm going to push back a little, because self-preservation and longevity are illusions, in my opinion. They're just illusions. They're these magic little things we create in our minds, like like something's gonna go bad and then everything's gonna collapse, and like there is no real control over those aspects. Two things you said to me. Let me finish, please.
Wait. Why is this bothering you so much?
Because it's bothering me because I think it's a little unfair. You describe two relationships, 5 years an ex, dozens of years a friend, for you to come to the conclusion that I've had enough. That is not you break my trust right away and it's done.
No,
that's an experience,
yes,
and that lets you that. So what that tells me is that, no, you do have space for grace and redemption.
Definitely.
And then so maybe this concept of like, you break my trust and it's done, that's not accurate. That's not who you are.
But in litigation, it's different, and I'll give you another example.
Okay,
I'm going to keep giving you examples.
Yeah.
Person, been representing them for like a year and a half. We're getting ready for mediation, and we find out that they're from a different country, and so they have different ways of looking at certain or amassing property or wealth. Turns out that the wage loss claim is based upon incorrect information, severely incorrect information, because they're getting funds from other people to do the things that they're doing.
Yeah.
Now, as an officer of the court, that is intolerable. I'm not going to jeopardize my license for that claim.
That's totally different, yes. But is a lot of what you experience in your past informing how you are forming relationships with clients? In my experience, yes. I mean, all of it is informed by like my ability to create and maintain relationships. I know it's a professional relationship governed by different rules, but I can't compartmentalize that. Like, I'm bringing that experience to it. So what I've felt as a child, felt as an adult, my friendships, they come into that because that's the way you build relationship. But what you're talking about is that you're just not going to like lie and present something that's inaccurate to a court because you're going to have professional consequences. I think that's different.
You're going to make all these exceptions. It's Mo's rule book. My thing is, you're good with me until you're not. And then if you're not, then you're not. However I get to that point, it's rare. You know,
okay, that's
it doesn't
good.
happen.
It's rare.
It doesn't
We
happen
got
even
rare.
yearly, but it does happen.
Yeah.
From time to time. And I used to also have this thing where I'd ask the paralegals, do we have a problem? Do we have a problem client?
Oh, okay.
And if they said yes, then I would want to know more. And that person, if they are truly a problem, A, they're disrespectful to the staff, B, they're just not, and one of those ways is just never returning phone calls. You have to track them down. Where are they? And there's no good reason for that. They are, they're doing, you only know what you know. And a lot of people that come to a law firm like this, they're trying to sell themselves, right?
Yeah.
So it's a lot different. The kind of client we get now is different than the client I got earlier on, where they weren't trying to do that. Yeah. They're trying to put on a real good front, and maybe they can't quite live up to it. So you have to have that spidey sense to realize like something's not right here.
Okay, so
and you can't risk your reputation on someone that is not who they say they are.
Aside from the reputation, talk about the economics, because we can only take so many cases.
Yeah.
And cases like
it's an investment.
Yeah, it's an investment.
It's a huge investment.
Now, speak to me about the economics a little bit about what the calculation is economically, because we gotta support people. We have to pay wages and pay the rent.
Sure. Well, like in a small firm, or when I was in, with Pat LaPlay or, smaller firms, it's not that big. We handled a higher volume of cases, and some of them are quite small. I could go to trial. A lot of times I would take a case that was smaller so I could just have a nice, week-long trial. I needed it.
Yeah.
And I could do cases for like $5,000 or $10,000 out of pocket.
Yeah.
That doesn't count your attorney time, but just what I had to pay to, invest in it. Here, it's like hundreds of thousands, typically.
Yeah.
Sometimes close to $1 million in costs. And we can't do that if we don't completely have faith and trust in who the client is and who they are and what the case is all about. We cannot make that investment.
You've taught me well how to do this, which is like when I'm meeting a new client, potential client to come introduce to the firm, I'm thinking about the economics right at the outset and thinking about how much financially does the firm have to likely put out on the case, and is this worth our time? Because we're obligated to all of our other clients. It's going to take away. So I am assessing the person's personality and the relationship. Is this going to work? I am doing that, but that's been a tough shift for me from the public defender because, like you said, I just get my clients.
Well, it's a tough shift for anybody going from just a normal office to a more catastrophic focused office.
Yeah,
it's just a lot more at stake. But also, there's another factor, Mo.
What is that?
I want to like my clients.
Okay. Well, you have the luxury because a lot of people want to be your clients.
But I want to like them. I want to enjoy. I want to feel like I'm so happy that you're happy. I want to.
Yeah.
I want to. And so does. I want my staff to love working with the client.
Yeah. I'm reminded of an interaction you had with someone, and they were like, "Why are you taking us?" And then you were like, "I like you." And I just was like, it was so sweet the way you said it. Because they felt like their case was not significant, Mike, and they were like, they were like, the Velvet Hammer, and then she was like, no, it's Karen, and I like you, and there was just this like sweet connection between these human beings who had suffered harm, and it wasn't catastrophic per se, and Karen was just like, no, I got you, and it was a sweet. So. It's not always dollars and cents. It's sometimes you're right. I can see that you're making decisions.
It's rarely dollars and cents, other than I have an obligation to the law firm
and your partners.
And also I only have so much time.
Yeah.
So I have to make these decisions on like, can I take this case? Can we take this case given our caseload, given the economics of the law firm? Can we take it? That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
But Mo, I mean, we will see. I think that maybe you hold on to stuff longer than I do. I also compartmentalize more than you do.
Yeah, I don't.
I do. I'm heavily compartmentalized.
Yeah. Boy, that's a lot of energy, Mike. Is compartmentalization, does that take a lot of effort for you?
No.
For me?
Yeah.
No, not necessarily. I ironically, my sort of outlook is similar to what Karen said. Like I'm totally behind people, but if they do something to break that trust, they don't get many chances. And once it's over, it's over. I've cut people out of my lives more than once for that very reason.
Yeah, and I won't ever completely cut them out. Well, I have kind of.
Yeah.
But normally it's just like they've gotten demoted.
Yeah. Oh, time. I mean, there's people that I
demoted.
There's people that I
They're
had
not top tier.
conflict with, that I thought I would never talk to again, and most of them I've talked to again, and some of them I've become friendly with again. But it takes a lot of time, and I mean, I've gotten softer in my older years than I was when I was younger.
I'm the opposite. I've gotten harsher.
You have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because time is short, and I want to spend it with the people that I love and that I care about, and vice versa.
You're convincing me of that. That is the one thing you've like the seed you've planted in my head about time is short. It's an important commodity, and you want to be thoughtful and intentional with who you put in your sphere. I agree with you.
Yeah.
And it's forced me to have to confront some of my personality traits about accommodating people.
Well, let me tell you about another case I had where client wasn't so much difficult as, so I went to trial on this case, and during voir dire, jury selection, I literally, one of the questions I asked were, do people that belong on the Jerry Springer show have the right to go to trial? Because this case was crazy.
You mean if they were on the show
Well,
and something happened?
If they were a person that could be on the Jerry Springer
Oh, okay,
show.
okay.
There was that much drama in their life.
Yes, I got you.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And they're like, yeah, they should be able to. And so I had primed the jury
Yeah.
for what was going to come.
Yeah.
My client lived a riotous life, and she was a riotous person. And it was a disputed case all the way around against the city of Redmond. She was stopped on a 2-lane highway where the speed limit was 50, and she was struck from behind by an ambulance. And the ambulance driver said that she did not have her left turn signal on. She said she had her left turn signal on. They did not have their lights on. They were going to some kind of training, and he hit her little pickup and just sent it. And anyway, broke her back, and it was a real mess. Well, I love her, even just thinking about her name, because I'm compartmentalized. I take that off the shelf, come down, and then I'm like right there. That's how I work. That's how my mind works. So like I don't think about her for years, and then here I am talking, and I'm like, you get that. What is that thing? The thing that goes up in the warehouse and goes over there, gets a box, comes back down.
Crane.
The crane.
Whatever that thing
Yeah.
is. So now it's open. I can just see her. I know everything about her. So she lived in this house at the bottom of the hill where I lived in, actually. I used to go by there and see her. And she had a younger boyfriend. And they were always calling the police on each other, primarily him.
Yeah.
And when we got to, and there was other weird things, like, so emotional distress is a component. There was a big issue of, her cow, whose name was Molly, was killed. And so she was very distraught about that. So there was a big whole issue that the defense was making that her emotional distress was related to killing of Molly the cow, instead of, it was just wild. But anyway, defense lawyer, the case had been continued like 5 times. The time before this, defense lawyer had been, I can't remember if it was a heart issue or whatever, but had an emergency issue like 2 days before the trial. So finally we're in trial. It was very, very inconvenient. At Kent, the defense lawyer had blown up all of the domestic violence call charges into big posters and literally lined the whole perimeter of the courtroom with them.
Oh.
There were so many of them. And the issue was, of course, that all of her emotional distress was related to this seesaw relationship, abusive spouse. I can't even remember if I even called him as a witness. I think I ended up saying I was going to and then not. Or maybe he was up there. I can't remember, but it was such a wackadoodle case. And the jury loved her. And they did not believe the ambulance driver. And this is right after 9/11.
Yeah.
So they did not believe the ambulance driver, who was like a hero. They found that they were completely at fault. Gave us a very, very great jury verdict. So I have done that many times in my career, which is to just show what we've talked about, which is humanize the client, show who they are, let them. I really believe that when you put on a perfect plaintiff, you're going to lose a case. Nobody believes there's such a thing.
There is no such thing. Moral of the story, lean into the truth.
At the very beginning, don't wait for your case to even start. I did it right in voir dire.
Yeah. I mean,
This is like a Jerry Springer show. And it was like the Jerry Springer show.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's good. That's a good lesson, because it tells you, like, don't be afraid of the bad issues, and just put it out there and just humanize it.
I can still remember her up there kind of yelling and screaming and crying all at the same time in the witness stand. I was like, oh.
So the takeaway here is that relationships can be difficult. Sometimes people have hard lines, and they're going to have to end the relationships with the client. There's economics involved. But if you're going to represent a person that you know is not likable, you have a responsibility to humanize them.
And you know what? I've heard from her since. She's doing well.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, she's doing well, and she felt vindicated.
Good.
And the jury's seen a lot worse.
Yeah.
She didn't pretend. She didn't try to hide who she was. So there you go.
There you go. And that's that.
There it is.